Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers lose in overtime to the Florida Panthers in Game 4. They lose by a score of 3-2, and the series is all tied up at 2, heading into Game 5. And that'll be back at Madison Square Garden. And so now it's a best-of-3 series. So Game 4 was awfully similar to Game 3. And the Ranger overtime magic, you knew that you were playing with fire there. The Rangers were 4-0 in overtime. Now they're 4-1. The game-winning goal is scored by Sam Reinhart on the power play. There's a lot to discuss here. And look, Florida was the better team. Rangers played a very good first period. They were up 1-0 after 1. They honestly could have been up 2-0, and we'll talk about that, where they had they scored on the power play, the Rangers, a goal by Vincent Trocheck. And then they had a lot of opportunities on the second power play, whereas Mika Zibanejad, who will be a major topic of conversation in this episode, hits the crossbar. And then there was more chances. But then the second and third period and overtime, Panthers absolutely dominated. Panthers score a couple of goals in the second period, one of them on the power play, one of them just after the power play expired. Rangers do tie it up in the third on a goal by Alexis Lafreniere, who continues to be far and away one of the Rangers' best players in these playoffs. But then from there, Panthers completely controlled play for the next 15 minutes or so, wherever it was in the third period. And then the Rangers take a penalty in overtime that came off of a really bad turnover by Zibanejad. Blake Wheeler, who made his return after being out for about 3.5 months. He was forced to take a hooking penalty, and Sam Reinhart wins it on the power play in overtime. Igor Shesterkin was absolutely brilliant. Igor, again, I feel bad. Look, we're back to where we were as far as with the Henrik Lundqvist era, where you watch these playoff games, and Rangers have been very, very fortunate to have these world-class, top-of-the-line goaltenders. And Igor, what he's doing is nothing short of absolutely brilliant. But it just wasn't good enough. And look, you knew Florida was going to push. You knew. Look, this was close to a must-win game for Florida. It was. If they go down 3-1, it would have been difficult. And that's where it's unfortunate, because as bad as the Rangers played, they were right there. And if they had somehow pulled this out in overtime, you're talking about a much different situation. But look, they ultimately got what they deserved, and so now it's 2-2. And the biggest issue I have is that the top Ranger players, when the Rangers have gone down in recent years, you think about it, it's because the top players, and when I say top players, you know what I'm talking about, but I'll say them, they have not gotten the job done. And tonight specifically, and he had not been good all series, but Mika Zibanejad was just absolutely horrendous. And his buddy Chris Kreider was right behind him as well on that. Just unacceptable play by those guys. And I got to be honest, I don't know that it necessarily gets better. With Zibanejad, he is someone that runs very hot and cold. He has, for most of his career, he has, whether it's in the regular season or in the playoffs. And it sucks that goal, that shot that he took in the first period does not go in. Because if it does, what I've seen from him is once he gets one, he can then get rolling from there. What really comes to mind is 2022 against the Penguins. He was garbage the first 5 games. Him and Kreider, terrible. But then he scores he scores in Game 6. Actually scores again. I believe he had 2 goals, and then he went on a hot streak. He scored in Game 7. He had a really good series against Carolina. Carried it over a little bit to the beginning of Tampa Bay series, but then, the rest of the team, and it's kind of feeling that way a little bit right now, as it did in the Lightning series. Maybe not to that extent, but where he did then cool down. But to be fair to him, I look back at that 2022 playoffs, and for the heart of it, he was one of their better players, but not so good at the beginning and not so good at the very end. And Kreider is an extension of that as well, where Kreider, it's like he has this unbelievable Game 6 against Carolina. Like, that'll go down in Ranger history, regardless of what happens from here on out. And that should be commended. But it's just so typical that then he follows it up with just giving you next to nothing these first 4 games of this Panthers series. And the thing is with Zibanejad and again with Kreider, and I'd been saying, and it's not going to happen, I would have liked to have seen them be split up during the regular season just to see what it looked like. And they never went there. And so as much as I love what Peter Laviolette's done, the biggest issues that I have with him is that, and look, Alexis Lafreniere absolutely deserves to be in that number 1 power play unit, really over Zibanejad. And I don't really care who it's over, but Lafreniere, it's a shame that he doesn't get the minutes that he deserves. That they need to switch that. Lafreniere averaging 15, 60 minutes a night is not going to cut it. He's clearly one of the most dangerous players on the ice. He needs to be playing more, but they always defer to the veterans. And to that point, the Jacob Trouba, his usage by Peter Laviolette is ridiculous. Why they went back to Miller Trouba, I have no fucking idea. And I would love to get Zach Jones in the lineup. I don't think it's going to happen. What I think makes some sense is to go 11 forward, 7 defensemen. There's so many deadweight forwards on this team. I typically prefer 12 forward, 6 defensemen, but the way this team is structured, getting Jones in there I know that he hasn't played for a while. I know that he's undersized. I understand the risks, but you got to give a different look somehow. But look, I don't think that Jones will be in there. I want him to be, but I don't think he will be. But yeah, it's just fucking ridiculous. The production that they're getting out of Zibanejad, Kreider, and Panarin as well. Panarin's not off the hook for me, but I'm not going to harp on him as much for the reason that at least in this game, he did have a nice setup to Vincent Trocheck on the power play goal. He did have a secondary assist on the Lafreniere goal, although to be fair, he wasn't involved much in it. But I'll lay off him a little bit, but he still needs to be in the conversation. And another bad game by another sort of no-show performance by him in Game 5, and he's right back on the hot seat as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, like from the second half of that Carolina series on, besides what Kreider did, like, and obviously like that can't be forgotten. Like, it's just been downhill. I mean, Zibanejad, I don't think he scored a goal since Game 1 against Carolina. Let me just see the stats. And for Zibanejad, as it was in the regular season, I'm pretty sure he only has 1 even strength goal all playoffs long. Let's see. So, because if you remember, it's crazy how things change. He has 1 even strength goal compared to Alexis Lafreniere, who has 7. Come on now. So, Zibanejad, the overall numbers are good. 3 goals, 11 assists, 14 points in 14 games. But if you remember, I was heaping praise upon Zibanejad and Trocheck through the Capital Series and the beginning of the Carolina Series, saying, hey, besides Igor, these are like your 2 top guys. Trocheck has continued that. Trocheck has, I can't say enough good things about him on any way you want to look at it. Like it's funny, Zibanejad is technically the number 1 center, but let's be real with ourselves. It's really Vincent Trocheck. It's just the way it is. But yeah, Zibanejad, just awful. And not only not scoring goals, turnovers left and right, getting hemmed in their fucking zone the last couple, really specifically the last 2 games. But again, it's Zibanejad and to a lesser extent Kreider. And plus minus can be a misleading stat, but looking at the postseason as a whole, the worst plus minus by far is Chris Kreider at -5. So, it's just unacceptable what it is. And they say all the right things. Kreider always says all the right things. But then it's just like sometimes we've seen this for years from him, so it's not a surprise. But Zibanejad, like he's had moments. I mean, Zibanejad's had moments in the postseason. It's not like he's always been a guy that doesn't show up. He's just really fucking streaky. And he's just getting manhandled right now. There's just no way around it. So really, really disappointing. And again, just the defense as a whole, it's problematic. You got to get Miller back with Schneider. Because Keandre Miller, honestly, sucks with Jacob Trouba. But that doesn't mean but Miller still deserves blame too. I don't want to just say, hey, like Trouba is just, we know how Trouba is. I don't need to go into that. But Miller Schneider, I know at least like it's more of an up-tempo pace. You have a better chance getting the puck out of the zone. And yeah, Gustafson, true, but will that be a problem? Sure, but it can't be any worse than what you're seeing now. So that's the one change that, while I'm going to say it's not made, maybe you get that. Maybe the coaching staff will go back to those pairs. I'm hoping for that. The one lineup change that did happen, Philip Hedl out, Blake Wheeler in. So Wheeler made his postseason debut, and a very admirable, the fact he came back from a really gruesome leg injury, give him a lot of credit, like, for sure. I don't mean to shit on him. I thought he was okay. He was fine for a while. It's tough what ends up happening with that penalty at the end. It wasn't his fault, but I don't love that he was out on the ice like that early into overtime. Where's the fucking Trocheck line? They always start the Zibanejad line, and then the second line we're putting out there is the Wheeler line? Come on. Like, I just don't see why. I understand a lot of that's matchup based, but like I understand like that's just what they've been doing, but you got to switch it up sometimes. But so Hedl was out, and they said he's healthy, which is good. He's not hurt, but they said it's kind of a load management thing, which I can understand why that's the case. Like, and look, Hedl hasn't been great for the most part, but I still think if you can get him in there, I hope that he is, but I don't know. Like game 5, he might still be out. He very well still might not be in the lineup, but I'm hoping that he comes back in. What they did was they had originally it was Roslovic with Kreider and Zibanejad, but it doesn't matter who you play with them. That's been the point all along. And eventually Roslovic has moved down and Kakko has moved up. And that was deserved because Kakko actually was one of their better, he was playing with a little extra jump. Like, he actually looked pretty good. But then once he went to that line, nothing happened. It didn't matter. So I don't know what they're going to do. Blake Wheeler was on a line for the most part with Goodrow and Rempe. And Cooley was back with Wenberg and Kakko until they made the Kakko-Roslovic switch. But yeah, there's a lot of dead weight. Look, the fact of the matter is you need the top guys to get going, because there is a lot of dead weight on the team. And they're doing enough. Like the depth is doing enough. I'm not going to make a big deal about them. To me, again, it's Zibanejad, Kreider, Panarin, and even Adam Fox, who is clearly hurt. He made such a great play on that Lafreniere goal. He really did. And he even had an assist on the Trocheck goal. So Fox, I'm not going to lump him in there either, even though we know he has more to give, but I think he's hurt. But yeah, let's jump into it. I mean, also Ryan Lindgren, like he left the game for a bit in the third period, took a pretty big hit. Again, the wear and tear is going to get tougher and tougher. This Panther team is no joke. They made a couple of lineup changes as well. Kyle Okposo and Steven Lorentz into the lineup, and Ryan Lomberg and Nick Cousins out. Lomberg being taken out was a little bit of a surprise. I thought he was pretty effective, but this is what they've done. And they have pretty good depth. Like, to put in Okposo, Lorentz, those are pretty solid fourth line guys to have in there, and it worked out for them. So let's see here. Some are going to complain about the officiating. It wasn't great. I'm not going to make a huge deal about it. Like, the Panthers were the better team, but I guess there might have been a missed trip. Kakko, I'd like to see a replay. Early in overtime was taken down that I think people were upset about. The Ryan Lindgren holding penalty was a little bit of it. That's a call that might have been a little bit soft, but I don't think it's about the refs here, honestly. So first period, Rangers played really well. It was a well-played first period after they didn't play so... I mean, look, the game 3 was not great. They won, but it wasn't great. First period, Rangers played well. However, they call Eric Gustafson for roughing Lou Storinen at 4:20. Rangers kill that off. And then at 7:07, Anton Lundell high-sticks Will Cooley, and the Rangers score. So the special teams to start was good. It didn't finish that way, but Vincent Trocheck, the former Panther, he scores again, and he's just been so good. 8th goal of the playoffs from Panarin and Fox. This was off of a one face-off, nice puck movement, and Panarin to Trocheck in the slot, slap shot, and I think it goes off maybe the crossbar and in. Perfect shot by Trocheck. Really not a whole lot Bobrovsky could do there. And the Rangers take a 1-0 lead. And then at 16:03, Brandon Montour cross-checks Trocheck, so he draws a penalty, and this is where the Rangers had so many chances to take a 2-0 lead, specifically Zibanejad. I thought it went in when it happened, but it did go off the bar. And that would have been so big. Not even so much. Look, to take a 2-0 lead would have been big. I think the Panthers would have still pushed, but just for Zibanejad, I think he really needs something. And it doesn't go in. Fox had chances, Panarin, and they're unable to score. So one of the Rangers going in the second period, then everything turns. Panthers would absolutely, as you saw in Game 3, what you saw in the third period of Game 3 is exactly what you basically saw in the second period and third period. Rangers could not clear the zone to save their lives. Panthers were just all over them, and the Rangers could not get it out of the zone, and that's where, again, you got to make some switches there. You have to. You cannot keep Miller with Trouba. I'm sorry. Let me see the ice times real quick here. It's just insane. I mean, Trouba 22 minutes 53 seconds, Miller 23 minutes. Like, I know Linger was out for a bit, so it's slightly skewed. But Gustafsson 15:27, Schneider 17:04, and I'm not even saying that they were great, but it's just come on now. Come on already. Like, Trouba plays way too much. And then by extension, Miller just is not nearly as good. Miller's terrible with Jacob. Let's just be honest. He sucks with Jacob Trouba. Come on. So, second period, again, Panthers completely dominating play. And at 6:42, Ryan Lindgren's called for holding Barkov. Now, what happens before this is Lindgren actually makes a nice play, and Panarin's unable to kind of hold on to the puck. That was a bad job by Artemi. It all started with him along the boards. And so Lindgren's in a spot where he holds Barkov. And he did hold him. I didn't love the call, but it was made. And again, keep in mind, Igor was locked in from the beginning. Like, rebound control was good. He looked fantastic. But the Panthers are able to score, what was it? How long after the power play had ended? 3 seconds after. It's the shot by Sam Bennett that, unfortunately, Igor is not able to hold on to. Kind of trickles behind him. And so if there's one fault in this entire game, it was that. Where, unfortunately, he's unable to hold on to it. And Keandre Miller is the one that's kind of behind the net. Keep in mind at this point that Zibanejad, Wenberg, Miller, and Trouba are on the ice, and Lindgren's coming out of the box. It ends up going down as Bennett's fourth goal of the playoffs from Forsling and Bobrovsky at 8:45. And Bennett's the one that takes the shot and actually scores as well, where it's behind Igor, uncovered. And unfortunately, Keandre, I can't bash him, but I wish that he did a better job there of either getting down and just making sure that puck does not go in, but he puts it ends up kind of going off of his stick and in. It's not an own goal, because if it were, it'd be unassisted. But I think it does go off of him. But Bennett was relentless. He kept hacking away, and he's able to kind of push it right past. It just goes past the line. Not by much, but it does. And the Panthers tied up at 1 right there. Then the Rangers take another penalty, and a bad one. Barclay Goodrow delay a game at 10:59. And this is another example of not really being able to get the puck out of the zone, facing pressure, but Goodrow can't do that. And this is another situation. Losing him to the box he's such an important penalty killer. When he took a penalty in Game 2, the one Panther goal, which ironically was by the same player as this game, Carter Verhaeghe, it was scored when Goodrow was in the box. Well, that happens again, and that's where. And I know Wenberg is one of the penalty kill guys, but I feel like if Goodrow was at the start, the whole thing's different. I think what would have happened is it would have probably been Goodrow with Trocheck, and then the order and Zibanejad with Kreider, but Wenberg ends up coming. I don't know. I feel like Wenberg ends up kind of a little higher on the depth chart. And again, I'm kind of harping on something that wasn't so crucial to play, but I'm just saying Goodrow being in the box is not great, and the Panthers take the lead. Batted in by Carter Verhaeghe. Nice job by him. 9th goal of the playoffs. Power play goal from Tkachuk and Barkov at 12:16. Panthers take a 2-1 lead. And this, unfortunately, it goes off of Lindgren a couple of times, and Verhaeghe, while it's in the air, bats it past Shesterkin to give the Panthers a 2-1 lead. Gustav Forsling trips Chris Kreider at 14:36. And so the Rangers get a power play, but they don't score on it. And the Panthers outshot the Rangers in the second period 14-5. It was bad. It was ugly. We go to the third period. Rangers do tie it up. They didn't do a whole lot, but they actually outscored the Panthers. That's the thing with the Rangers. The combination of Igor Shesterkin and just they're able, even when it's horrible, and I guess this is a positive, Rangers are able to keep it close. And Lafreniere scores again. It's just, he's been one of the really huge bright spots, not only in the playoffs, but just overall this season. He's just been so good. 7th goal of the season from Fox and Panarin. Beautiful, beautiful move by Adam Fox. To see that he's capable of doing that's a good sign. Nice little spinorama, backhand pass to an all-alone Lafreniere in front, and some pretty good hand-eye coordination from Lafreniere, and it goes past Bobrovsky. So the Rangers tied up at 2 there, but then from there, Panthers totally controlled play. Rangers were fortunate to get this to overtime. Let's put it that way. They were. That's all I'm going to say. It was just, Pozo had a really good opportunity. There was some other chances. Just, the puck was in the Rangers zone the entire time, the whole time. And the Panthers had to shoot the Rangers 13-5 in the third. We go to overtime. And at that point, you're feeling, all right, like, hey, the luck might run out, but you're there. Like, if you're a Rangers fan, it's like, hey, and if you're the Rangers, like, all right, here we are. As bad as it's been, you're tied. Like, not a bad place to be. A goal away from maybe taking a 3-1 series lead. But Mika Zibanejad said, no, I'm not going to allow that to happen. So they started with the Zibanejad line with Kreider and Kakko, and that's what they've done. And then for some reason, again, I'm just confused as to why they then went, I guess presumably it would have been, I mean, we never saw who would have come out because Mika was the last one on. Wheeler comes on and Cooley, and I guess it would have been with Goodrow, likely. I just don't know why you wouldn't have gone, more soon to the Trocheck line. But again, that's here nor there. The bigger deal is that Mika Zibanejad, who has no play to make other than by putting it either towards Cooley or just, getting it deeper into the Panther zone. Instead, he tries to make a cross-ice pass to the middle of the ice to Blake Wheeler. I don't know what he was thinking. And so, unfortunately, we know Wheeler is not the fastest, so he has to then, the Ranger defensemen were changing. And so Wheeler has to chase back and give credit. I think Nico Mikkola was the one that kind of forced this breakup. And the Panthers go the other way, and it ends up in a Barkov. There was a couple of Panthers around, and Wheeler tries to chase down Barkov and has to hook him. Now, Wheeler did what he had to do. It sucks because he's slow. And if that was someone else, they might have been able to track that player down. 95% of the blame goes to Mika. And Wheeler, it's tough. It's tough. But what sucks is, really, that should have been a penalty shot. And at the time, look, it's not like you want a penalty shot to happen, so I'm not going to make a huge deal about it, but like by the letter of the law, that was what should have been a penalty shot. I think because it was overtime, they didn't want to call it a penalty shot, and so it's a penalty. I would have preferred, with the way Igor's been, look, could he have allowed a goal? Absolutely. But I actually would have preferred the penalty shot over the power play. So anyway, Wheeler to the box, power play Panthers, and the Ranger penalty kill, unfortunately, it was so good for a while. And, it hasn't been as good in the series. Got to call it as it is. And Jacob Trouba just goes way out of position. He goes towards, like, Brandon Montour. I don't know what he's thinking half the time. Not only is he just, like, slow, can't control a puck, turns the puck over all the times, but his decision-making, it's like, what are you thinking? He gets aggressive when there's no need to. And so by him doing that, he's out of position. It's a quick tic-tac-toe. Montour to Barkov to Reinhart in the slot. Perfect shot by Sam Reinhart past Shesterkin. And it's Reinhart's 8th goal of the playoffs from Barkov and Montour at 1:12 of overtime. So done very quickly. And that's what sucks, is that if you could have kept it 5-on-5, I know that sounds counterintuitive because the Rangers aren't the best 5-on-5 team, but the way Igor has been, maybe you find a way to win that one. But just a terrible play by Zibanejad forces Wheeler to take a penalty. Trouba goes out of position, and Reinhart scores in the power play. And the Panthers win 3-2. So we're all evened up at 2. That's a tough loss. It's not unexpected, but the Rangers got to play a lot better. And it all starts with Zibanejad, Kreider, and Panarin. And like I said, you got to make Miller Trouba has got to be broken up. You cannot have them together. So Laviolette, there's changes to be made there for sure. But now I think it's good they're going back home in the sense that even though the Rangers have the ability to win on the road, even though the Panthers have shown a definite ability to win on the road, through the first 4 games, the Rangers, look, game 1 wasn't good. It was so much better than what 3 and 4 were. So the Rangers have shown a better ability at home. But it doesn't in hockey, that doesn't necessarily match up with what the results will be. We know that. So it's weird, it's the margins are so slim that, but I still, you hope that being at home helps. It really hasn't done a whole lot in these playoffs and just in general, I feel like in recent seasons, but Yeah, game 5 is really big. Really, really big. To go up 3-2 would be important because, look, the fact of the matter is, like, I look back at those Lightning. I mean, hey, there's actually a lot of examples. Wow, there's a crazy amount of examples of this. 94 against the Devils. They lose at home in game 5. Now we know that they obviously come back and win that series. That was a 2-2 series. They lose game 5 at home. 2012 versus the Devils, 2-2 series. They lose game 5 at home and lose in 6. 2015 versus the Lightning, 2-2 series. Game 5 at home, they lose. Now, they end up winning game 6 on the road, but then they lose game 7 at home. And then against the Lightning a couple years ago, 2-2 series. They needed to win game 5 at home. They lost it. So many a times in recent Ranger history, at Madison Square Garden, they lose game 5. They got to change that trend. They really got to win game 5. I'm not saying if they lose that they can't come back and win 6 and 7. And I'm not saying if they win that they won't still lose the series. But it'll be an awful bit easier if they can play a solid game 5, find a way to win, and then at that point, all you got to do is win 6 or 7, not both. It's a huge difference. So I really hope that they can turn it around. It's going to be a big, big game 5. And it's too bad because they were close enough to making this a series where, hey, it's 3-1. You up 3-1 versus Carolina. It was the way it happened was different, but it was just too much for Carolina to overcome being down 3-1. And that may have been the case with a good Florida team, but now it's 2-2. Look, I feel as if the series goes 7. That's been my feeling, and I'm going to stick with that. I do tend to think that it goes 7. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, Florida, they deserve this win, and they got it. Ranger overtime magic comes to an end. They're now 4-1 in overtime in these playoffs. And like I said, the top guys, specifically Mika Zibanejad, really, really, really need to turn this around quick, or, the Rangers' season might come to a close. But hopefully the Rangers have some more magic in them, and hopefully going back home to Madison Square Garden will do them some good. They're going to need to turn it around after a pretty poor showing down in Florida, but they were able to get that win in Game 3. That was the mission. The mission was to get a game. They got it. And so now it's a best-of-3 series as we head back, all evened up at 2. Game 5 at Madison Square Garden should be an interesting one.